Marco.
Hello, everyone.
Actually, now you should go a little down.
I should go
A little.
there.
Yeah, here we go.
I'm like in the tree, in the forest.
So Marco Lienhard from my where I was born. I was born in Switzerland. So
From your country.
yes, I was born in Switzerland. Where were you born? I was born in Zurich. Where were you born?
I was born in Bienne, which is more like central Japan. Switzerland. We're in Japan already. So I was born in Bienne in Switzerland, which is in the canton of Bern. So it's a small town, actually. It was,
So that's the German Switzerland, right?
right, but it's actually at the border. Bienne is actually French and German. So it's a bilingual town, and I was born in that town, and then I lived in a smaller town where my parents lived. And my father was a cook and musician, opera singer, and played guitar, piano.
Really?
So listened to a lot of more classical music as I grew up. So I played the piano, I played the regular silver flute as I grew up. But I stayed in Japan, in Switzerland. I stayed in Switzerland only till I was, after I graduated high school, and I went straight to Japan. And I ended up staying there for 18 years.
Wow.
And
wow. When
so
did you go to Japan? What year?
In 81. So right after high school I graduated, and then pretty much right away I was going to go to university a year after, because it was an exchange program that I joined. So after that I was supposed to go to Geneva to the university, study psychology, and I decided first I'd take a break for a year and sort of see something, learn a different language, see another part of the world that I wouldn't be able to go on my own so easily, and I thought Japan would be the place to go.
But wasn't it a little far away from?
Well, that was the point. Like the States, you can fly yourself. You speak English. English wasn't too difficult. I was attracted also to go to Australia. Obviously, I like to go far away. So Australia, New Zealand, Costa Rica, Indonesia were the countries that I put on my list that were available. And but Japan was chosen, and so I was very excited to go there. I wasn't able to learn the language, though. That was the only thing. The only country that really I would start really from scratch. But that was a challenge too. I love to learn languages, so instead of you learning 2 languages like you do in Switzerland, or 3, I added 1, so I had Italian on top. So language was sort of a thing that I really enjoyed learning. So learning Japanese was another sort of challenge, and I look forward to that.
Were you already a musician, playing music?
I was high school, so I did singing, with the choirs in school.
Oh, really?
And then I did piano, but as compared to other countries where in Switzerland you have to do, it's extracurricular, you have to do all on your own. So after school, all the homework and everything you have, the private piano lesson, private flute lessons, so that's much more, study, and it takes much more from your time.
Right.
So when I went to Japan, I did take my flute with me. I thought probably they would have a piano, it would be easy to find. So I ended up in Osaka, in Ibarakishi, where
Excuse me, what kind of flute?
It's a silver flute, the Miyazawa. It was
even Japanese. Okay.
Yes, most flutes were at that time already. Either Yamaha was still pretty strong in flutes, I guess. Miyazawa. And
so you went to Osaka and
I took my flute back to Japan.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. Okay.
And so where it belonged, I brought it back. And then I discovered, I didn't really know anything about Japanese music. I didn't even learn the language. I had no time. I couldn't find any books to learn Japanese at that time. So once I was there, little by little, I was able to learn a little bit about the language, obviously. And then I learned about the music. So that's when I discovered taiko. Actually, I saw it on a picture first. And then I heard the shakuhachi for the first time. And that's when it sort of really hit me. And I was like, I felt like the flute was almost too built as a sound, almost like too clear, too beautiful. You try to make, sound as crystal as possible. And the shakuhachi was allowing all these sort of sound of nature, the wind and it seemed like the range was much bigger, and I thought I was very attracted by just hearing the sound. It just like really hit me when I heard it for the first time. Though I saw taiko at that same time, but shakuhachi just spoke to me right away, and I thought I have to learn this instrument. So I was trying to find ways to learn the instrument, and so the group I had seen performing these instruments first, and the name is Ondekoza, that's the name of the group. I contacted them and was able to...
But you didn't contact them. I know when we
I
met
I read a magazine, yeah, it was in a paper, and so I contacted them before actually seeing them. But I was just intrigued by the sort of the communal lifestyle and playing music the whole day. So that was sort of attractive to me. And so when we contacted them, they eventually responded. They were coming to Osaka and they invited me to come see the concert. And that's when I heard the taiko and shakuhachi the first time. And taiko was very impressive too, but it felt like that's more like Japanese, and it seemed like maybe it'll be harder for me to get in. But when I heard the shakuhachi, it's just like, I can do that, you know, I need to learn that. It just felt like something, it was just a calling.
Oh, that's interesting, because I told you many times that I feel when you play the shakuhachi, it's you more than the taiko, and now you're telling me that.
That was my first calling, yes. I mean, the taiko, as I joined the group, taiko was the first thing that everybody does in the group. And then, so everybody did the taiko, and it took actually a while for me to learn the shakuhachi. It was hard to find a teacher where we were at that time. The group had moved from Sado Island to Nagasaki, and so Nagasaki is not really famous for shakuhachi players, but there was one guy who played it sort of for fun, and he played sort of more Inca music. So I mean, he taught me like very simple, the basics.
Right.
And so I was able to work on my own, and eventually they introduced me to one of the, I found out later, the top player in Japan. So I was very fortunate to be able to be learning, his music, and the more and more I listened to him, and it made the music even more sort of interesting and more appealing and more exciting to learn and to learn about the instrument. So I would go from Nagasaki. I would go once a year. I would go to Tokyo, and so I would go there for 10 days and then travel back and forth. And whenever we had time, usually at the beginning when we weren't that busy, it would be about once a month we'd go for a week and then study shakuhachi. And also at time I would learn with the first student. So the teacher usually, Yokoyama, was traveling, or also price-wise is much more expensive. So you learn with the first Ichiban Deshi, and then you learn.
Ichiban Deshi is the top student, right?
Yeah. And then so from there you learn basically the songs, and then you go back to the teacher and for like finishes, touches. But when you learn with like the top teachers, I mean basically you get from them, most of them never teach you anything. It's just like the fact of playing with them that sort of inspire you, and you try to get as much as you can from the teacher by looking at him.
Yes.
But most teachers never teach you anything. They don't say, oh, you have to do this, the fingering is like this and this. I mean, you just have to like really look carefully. And so the first student usually is the one who already went through that process and is the one who will help you a little more. That's why, you get a little more from learning with also the different people. And in Japan, also the typical way of learning, usually you go to the lesson, which is usually once or twice a day during the week or month, and then so you go to that class, and there might be 2 or 3 people in front of you in line, so you have to wait sometime an hour or 2, but in the meantime you listen to other people playing and you hear how they're being corrected, so that sort of helps. But in my case, because I didn't have much time, I sometimes was not able to go in those regular classes, so I sometimes was just one-on-one, and I had time to spend and talk with the teachers, so it was really interesting to talk also afterwards.
Were you the only foreigner in Ondekoza at that time?
Ondekoza at that time, yes. Though before, they said that there were like 1 or 2 that had joined, one a Japanese American, I think, one Chinese American, I think, that had joined. And while I was there were a lot of people that came through the group too.
So then can I say you are maybe really the first foreigner
in Ondekoza?
In Ondekoza, who started from zero and became then later the music director? Like
I guess, yeah, pretty much. I mean, there were again other performers, but there was another guy who just did shakuhachi, and he did a little taiko, but he came in and out, and that was the first group. So they were like different. The group started in 1969, so I joined more like in '80s. So there already had a split had happened there. So I sort of saw the second wave of the members. I met the older group, older members later on, and it was just interesting to listen to some of the stories that from their side, and because we were hearing it from the director, the leader, Mr. Den, and so it was obviously different points of views. But so I never really, I was always asked to become the zacho, which means the leader of the group, not really the top boss, but from historically all the leaders, the zacho, prior to me, while I was there, they would last 1 or 2 years and they would leave the group. And to me, it felt like, oh, if I go in that position, maybe there's a lot of pressure, you get all the responsibility and eventually you leave. So I felt like I don't want to be in that position because I plan to stay a little longer. So I would eventually be sort of like the kagemusha, the person in the back, sort of, especially when we are on European tours or abroad, because nobody spoke English. So I would be sort of the one pulling the strings in the back and arranging some things, but never really like being in the front, like I'm the one directing. But on stage I would be doing light, stage managing, so obviously I was the one, I would say, okay, we're going to do this and this. And then listen to the director and say, well, we wanted to use this today or do this song. And so, but I try to arrange and try to make things happen.
Good.
So yeah, and that was for 18 years. So, and then we went, as you might know, marathon was part of the the training of the group, and so we ran 20 to 30 miles a day. And the last thing I did with the group and arranged was to do a 9,000 mile around the U.S. So we started New York City Marathon. We did a concert at Carnegie Hall, went down all the way to Miami, San Diego, Seattle, and back through Chicago to New York, and again marathon and Carnegie Hall. And so that was like a whole tour that took 3 years.
So what was the idea of running marathon?
Well, the marathon, I think, was more to sort of build up, the body in the taiko was more stamina oriented. So Ondekoza is more like basically a group of very young drummers, and it's more like the spirit, and really like it's very, what do you call that? Very sort of raw energy that comes out.
Masculine.
Right, and so like, I believe like when Koto split up, they were trying to get away.
Who was Koto?
Koto is another group that was created from members of Ondekoza.
Yes.
And so they were sort of fed up of doing all that running.
Right.
And they wanted to sort of be a little more commercial, make more money. After a while of running and training all the time, obviously you want to settle down a little bit. And so they came to that age, they were turning 30s. And so they decided to do that on their own, and they became quite successful, touring around the world, obviously. But looking at it from Ondekoza, obviously there's that raw energy that's missing, and it becomes very technical, and then something on stage just seems to be missing. You have that. If it becomes too clean, too clear, then it's just almost like you look at a picture. It might be technically better, but then there's something that's missing, sort of that energy. And I think that's something also that Mr. Den inculcated, it's sort of pushed into the group, in the members, Mr. Den, the director.
Ah, yes.
And so when he felt the group sort of slacking down or feeling like they're getting too at ease with the show, then he would just have a talk and upset everyone, and everybody would just be very upset, and sort of on stage it would be like fireworks. So he was very sort of clever in that way.
Yeah.
Sort of almost like mind control.
Controller. Okay. Good. So you went all the way from Switzerland, from Biel to. Why first to Osaka?
Well,
and
I was supposed to go
Ibaraki.
Aomori, but in Aomori the homestay was and not working out. I think the mother was sick, so they found at the last minute another place in Osaka, and that was Ibarakishi.
Oh, okay. And Aomori is another part, right?
Oshawa, yeah.
Where now we had the close to the earthquake.
Well, yeah, further north, yes.
Yeah.
South of Hokkaido, yes. At the end of Honshu. And that would have been totally different, because that's the world of Tsugaru shamisen, you know, the very percussive 3-string instrument that's played there. Maybe I would have been playing that. Though I think I've always been more attracted by flutes.